Remember the first Inspector Gadget film? Yeah, don't blame you. Simple story here. It starts with a French-American cartoon collaboration from the 80s. Inspector Gadget, a Clouseau by way of Get Smart, whose main gimmick is his ability to call on the hundreds of technical gadgets stored inside his body. Somewhere.
Go, Gadget on! Go, Gadget copter!
Go, Gadget colonoscopy!
He bumbles around in his efforts to fight crime while the real detective work is done by his super genius niece Penny and his remarkably upright dog Brain, guiding him to fight the evil syndicate MAD, led by the shadowy Dr. Claw, an unseen Bond-style villain with the sickest voice in cartoon history, because Frank Welker doesn't miss.
He's there, all right. Exactly when I want him.
Silly, funny, stupidly entertaining cartoon running on an unwavering formula that was beloved by kids of a certain age. Like me. This, the Moomins, X-Men, Megamaths, we had it made, chaps. None of our shows were bad, okay? We don't get a lot of formulaic cartoons now, in a world post-Airbender. But back then, this was one of the better ones, riffing on jokes that became funnier through unrelenting repetition. Gadget's complete obliviousness to everyone around him, sometimes to the point of sociopathy.
Aha! You must be the man from the agency.
Brain trying to speak like a human and making Scooby sound positively fluent. The endless catchphrases,
Wowzers!
including Dr. Claw's final words as he'd make his inevitable escape at the end of every episode.
I'll get you next time, Gadget. Next time.
It was comfort food, perfect kids' TV, a fun blend of the previous generation's cinematic influences to give us our own slapstick action comedy, and it kind of informed my wider understanding of pop culture. This was the first time I ever found out about The Godfather, my parents having to explain this episode was a parody. One I still kinda rate as a bit of a high point for the series, as Gadget faces off with a Brando sound-alike and his barbershop quartet of sons.
Okay, boys, we get Gadget.
Yes, Papa!
Peak comedy. You've never heard a guy sing an evil laugh before. Every episode there was some new genre or angle to cover, and the music was banging. A weird fusion between the golden age of cinema and a then modern synth sound. I guess that's kind of who Gadget was, bridging the past and the future while slipping on a banana. So much to love, even now. Nothing groundbreaking by any means, but incredibly solid. Absolutely understanding what its audience wanted. So of course Hollywood looked at it and said, oh wow, amazing. We'll be doing none of that. The Gadget movie is a boilerplate superhero adaptation as we started to see in the post-Tim Burton Batman era, where everyone wanted a piece of the adaptation pie, some working, most not, and Gadget is decidedly on the not side, opening like an alternate universe version of Dream Scenario. There's a sympathetic origin explaining how he got his gadgets,
What have they got me on?
a love interest, and a couple nagging bosses that turn him into a put-upon underdog. Not exactly what was happening in those cartoons.
I don't know how you trace that gold. True genius.
You are just a publicity stunt that we have to put up with. Why don't you just about face and get out of my office?
Penny's barely in this. Brain is just a dog. And, shockingly, Dr. Claw's nowhere to be seen. I mean, I heard he was in the movie because people kept complaining about it, but nope. Nothing. Not a sausage. Obviously dealing with some kind of Blade Runner recut here. This is a movie made in a world with no social media. Execs and creatives running amok with children's properties without fear of reprisal, which is almost impressive. Even enviable, if the stunningly weird decisions they made weren't part of why you see so much defensiveness from fans now. I'm imagining the meetings as we speak. Alright fellas, I got a $1 billion idea right here. Now, see, he's got a transforming car. He's got a car, and I think, why doesn't the car talk? Let's make it like that Knight Rider guy, but not Knight Rider, that's dumb. Don't do that. Let's give him a voice that's like a people voice, sassy. It's a voice that's hip with the youth.
Gather with me, bells, baby! It's a Disney movie!
Yeah, pretty wacky stuff. Better watch out. We're taking psycho pills. Every decision just raises more questions. I don't get why everything in this dream is green. I don't get why there's a robot clone of the love interest to get across this one bit of exposition.
What foot?
The one he stole and copied to make me.
And Doug's right. Why is there a wide-angle shot of a fat guy reacting to every joke?
Slapstick. Huh? Idiot.
Occasionally it'll do things where I go, alright, I sort of see what you're doing, I guess. I see why that's there in the construction of the reality I live in. But the majority doesn't make sense. Not unless you're on the same wavelength as its creators, you know, face down in a pile of coke. Yeah, let's spend the time and money to introduce Gadget's outfit like it's some big superhero costume reveal.
The Gadget suit.
Like, it's a hat and coat. I just assumed he owned those, but you do you. These aren't even bad actors. You'll find them in plenty of projects where they're good. Dabney Coleman, bro, he's a funny guy. He's Principal Prickly.
My big, saggy butt.
Broderick isn't even bad. Well, alright, he's bad as Gadget, playing him as a fish-eyed innocent small bean, but he's great as evil Gadget, doing impressions of Cagney and Godzilla, I guess. It's even more fascinating now, looking back within the climate of the 2020s, where almost everything is now an adaptation of an established franchise, with endless debates over its closeness to the source, which I don't feel is the only issue here. Doesn't help, no points for that, but it's not inherently the problem. For all the social media ink spilled on these arguments, looking at Gadget, I don't think we appreciate how much fidelity we have now.
You actually go outside in these things? What would you prefer? Yellow spandex?
Choices made to include stuff you couldn't imagine existing on screen. Not back then, for better or worse. If you're fighting about whether or not Thanos is totally close to the comics, how they turned his motivations from physical to metaphorical, you're leaping over what we would have said in the 90s. Which is, Thanos is in this? What? But there's nothing inherently wrong with an adaptation that upends the source material completely to make a film that works on its own. The Mask went from being about a gritty R-rated freak of nature who's never truly been the same person twice, to a 90s superhero parody, processed through the golden age of Hollywood craze going on at the time, and the movie was and is seen as a major success. Nobody's online going, hey, this sucks, where's Walter? He's kinda this guy. Kinda. In fact, he's actually in the spin-off cartoon, along with other kinds of people. Those people.
Fish people.
But I think in all cases, what people respond to is the clarity of intent, and how it captures the spirit of the original idea in a brand new format. The Mask rounds off the edges and goes for a much broader style of comedy, but is still a madcap, anarchic spin on what the comic was already doing, with an expert performance from a guy who might actually be a cartoon.
Look, Ma! I'm roadkill!
This guy's my Deadpool, honestly. I'll go as far as to say, I think he's crazier. Wade was pretty tame in dealing with this douchebag in an effort to look nice in front of a girl, compared to what Ipkiss does to some guy's ass for overcharging.
Hold on to your lug nuts. It's time for an overhaul.
But both these films, and other adaptations, either close or not close to the source, sometimes work because they capture the feel of the source on some level, or execute a good idea from it well, with a clear intention that Gadget never even begins to approach. It's in service of nothing, marking up most of its runtime with just laying down what's happening, instead of making us instinctively feel why we should care, existing not for any reason that explains why the source retained an audience, just because the balance sheet said it might do alright, or maybe because someone made a bet on who could make the most off-the-wall McDonald's toy yet. Who's to say? It's a write-off, it's a woozy, it's a wazzy, it's not worth getting worked up about all these years later, even if it was quite fun to do it for a bit then. Inspector Gadget is a mess. Inspector Gadget 2
Evil's afoot.
is better. This is where people switch off, because frankly, we're all sick of it. You get online, you see people proselytizing about how the childhood film you grew up on was actually a misunderstood masterpiece, even though all the adults before you couldn't stand it. And then we're inundated with nervous execs seeing those takes get thousands of likes, leading to a slew of cash-ins and placatements rather than any great new stories. It's a nightmare. A war economy. I hate it. But I also like money. So now it's my turn. Though I'm not going to say this is an underrated classic or a masterpiece or whatever. These are easy ways to get positive attention without really talking about the movie, which is, unsurprisingly, a nostalgic touchstone for me, absolutely speaking to the success of its release on home video. But Gadget is an exception. I find myself coming back to Gadget 2 in a way I don't with a lot of other nostalgic spin-offs, and the reasons I liked it then aren't far off the reasons why I like it now. On the level it's aimed at, and with the resources they did and didn't have, it's an entertaining time, and as the sequel to maybe one of the more baffling adaptations, it's actually an interesting case study in capturing what worked about the source, by playing it straight.
Wowzers.
Sorta.
You excuse me for 1 minute.
Gadget 2 just cuts right to it. Inspector Gadget now fighting crime is his day job, but suddenly experiencing a slew of unavoidable glitches that stop the gadgets he wants to use from appearing, causing a lot of boobery, as they say. Stoogery, slapstickery, these are getting kinda trickery. The police department, in response, have been working on a potential backup. A second Gadget officer that works on less flawed technology as well as being completely robotic, and therefore unable to make mistakes, but is unveiled at a time when an evil force decides to make a return, as shot by Sam Raimi. Someone's gonna be mad I said that. Gadget is a little too distracted to prove himself to be of any help, but with the help of Penny and Brain, he might just be able to defeat the mad agents while, hey, now, this is just straight up an Inspector Gadget episode. What? No, that doesn't happen. what other jokes can I put in here? No weird workarounds to try and circumvent the formula of the original. No bizarre new interpretations of the characters, for the most part. No gadgetinis. Ugh. Gadgetinis. Hey, I like that show. Get lost. Goodbye. And maybe it's because the movie's aware of what it is. A direct-to-video, low-budget feature filmed in Australia. Very likely to avoid tax issues. But we'll assume the statute of limitations is up on that one. In a way, this kind of gives it a guerrilla filmmaking feel. Some simple digital effects, a lot of practical nonsense, which we all take our shirts off for now, and a host of local Australian actors playing it absolutely at the level it should always have been played at. It's got a readable plot with arcs, it's got a mystery element, figuring out the villain's evil scheme, and it even has characterizations that feel like somebody looked at the cartoon for more than a minute. Maybe 2 minutes. It is, for my money, the best adaptation of Gadget yet. And a big part of it may actually be its central performance.
And when we interrogate criminals, I'll play good Gadget and you can play bad Gadget.
I don't think so.
Okay, then you play good Gadget and I'll be bad Gadget.
Here's the reason Broderick's Gadget fails.
Oh, let's go Gadget. I really like it.
Don Adams' take was innocent and naive, yes, but he wasn't humble.
This body is a finely tuned instrument, capable of amazing feats of strength.
The guy was a cop, and played up his patronizing sense of entitlement, of moral authority, making every sentence out of his mouth a lecture, often one he knew absolutely nothing about.
We're sinking. A warehouse sinking? Not likely, my mad friend. There's only one way to handle this. We're all under arrest. Everyone remain here while I go look for a policeman. A perfect three-point landing.
You must take your finger and put it in the butt. That's what gives it the cadence you can do impressions of. That's why Mike Matei thought this was a good idea. It was always funny because he was always wrong, but never broke character, coming back around to making him endearing, truly believing in his job and making an effort to be helpful, even if he wasn't terribly self-aware. And yet, everybody still thought he was a real threat. It was great.
Excuse me, gentlemen. I'm looking for a policeman to report a theft.
It's no use, Dr. Claw. Gadget's caught up with us.
You never get all that from Broderick, who was really playing it like he was the chosen one, destined to prove his worth by being a nice guy, for all that meant. It just didn't work. You never felt he was Gadget. But you do feel it with French Stewart.
Ma'am, do you know that drag racing on public roads is illegal?
Does he sound exactly like Don? No, but the attitude is so on point you don't feel a difference.
You'll never guess what happened. Claw escaped.
Not to worry, G2. I'll get us out of this.
Go Gadget scissors. You get back to school, and I'll see you tonight. And you. I hope you like prison food.
And while it might seem like he's working it a bit hard if you're over the age of 2,
Claw clue. It's a clue about Claw?
the relentlessness of his attitude, the repetition, and the complete sense of conviction is what makes it like the cartoon, and gets even more endearing as it goes.
No one is above the law.
This is what you also said last week when you arrested that troop of girl rangers for selling cookies.
Those cookies were 3 days past expiration date.
The naivety is even played with more nuance than I expected. Because everything is so Disney Channel big, it makes the moments where he brings it down actually more heartbreaking. Like the guy knows there's a reality to address, but thinks putting on his silly little act is the only way to get taken seriously. A role he's expected to play compared to who he really is.
Chief, all I ever wanted to be, my entire life, was a crime fighter.
Your badge.
This is the kind of stuff they were getting into in Copland, folks. It's stuff like that which catches me off guard and makes me see him as maybe the most rounded version of the character. Things I don't think people were expecting to ever hear someone say about that guy off Third Rock, but hey, here we are.
I have a history of hair loss in my family.
Small point as well, but I'm glad they recognized the Dick Tracy outfit from the original was kind of off, and finally put him in the overcoat. My undiagnosed OCD thanks you.
Everything's fine!
And there's more than just Gadget, which feels closer, because this thing doesn't just have corrections to the first film, but actual deep cuts. These 3 henchmen claw hires might seem like random thugs that, yeah, really tells you this was the 2000s.
And you must be the one they call the Ninja.
Ninja? Why do they call you that?
But they were all on the show. Squint, he was in it. The Ninja, yes, a specific ninja, who goes wah in flavors of success and failure. And Jungle Bob, though I don't remember him being jacked.
No problem, love.
Oh, I see. Couldn't get Hugh Jackman, so we got a huge jacked man. I'm sure I stole that joke. Penny and Brain, like the show, have a more active role in solving the case, actually processing the clues in a way that had me like, oh, that's smart, I guess. And the girl playing Penny isn't bad. Way closer to the attitude I remember from the show.
Which means the other Uncle Gadget was Presto Changeo. I've got to find him fast.
Must have gone out of business, because it's not in any of the directories after 1960.
First girl sat around a lot, I remember that. Always seemed kind of annoyed to be there. Like, what did we do? What did I do? None of that here. Two very wholesome performances. And you almost believe this Gadget could be a decent parent for a change.
I'll see you tomorrow. Don't forget to brush your teeth.
He and Penny have good family chemistry, and I like that she actually gets frustrated with him. Feels like there's actually some goddamn dynamics in this thing they pooped out onto a VHS.
This is work for a serious law enforcement professional.
You mean like a bathroom attendant?
Exactly.
Naturally, there's a few adaptational hiccups, partly due to the fact that even with the corrections, it still tries to work as a sequel, now with that slightly awkward tween energy of a Disney Channel spin-off.
Gadget!
I might have done the first film's Quimby a little dirty earlier in the video, as his attitude does change at the end, implying he's going to become the Quimby of the cartoon, and the sequel kind of drops the ball by upping the anger to Flintstone levels. You don't mind so much because he's played well, and intensely, and it's actually kind of scary. Whoa. Reservoir Dogs. I'm not sure how I feel about their attempt to get Brain talking. Cute gag, I guess. Got Jeff Bennett some cash.
I'm getting a little tired of liver-flavored kibble all the time.
But even the stuff that isn't as close or based on anything lands better than the first time around. The mayor no longer a lame joke and now randomly some form of Judy Garland. Is this Drag Race? That's a sister joke. She did that one.
Is that my camera?
I don't even hate the car this time. He's not only more organically all over the movie, but they actually gave some banter to work with beyond him being the cool wise ass. Like everyone now acknowledges that him being there is kind of weird.
You are tricked out with more factory exits than the Batmobile. Just sure that it's all good under the hood, alright?
I have no idea what you just said, but I'm sure that if I were a car, it would have been very helpful.
Hell, this final joke tells him to get stuffed. Mission accomplished. But the closest fix is Dr. Claw, and he is, honestly, a delight. Not because he's on point. Not at all. While there's an effort to get closer, he still has a claw, the voice is off, less like the real Claw and more like, I don't know, your dad or something.
I'm so evil. Blah, blah, blah.
But I kinda love it. To me, that's right. Gadget is basically dad humor, and Claw is him putting on a silly voice and running around the garden in his weird hat, which is a second-rate excuse for me to have the Godfather in the edit bay. Of course, this also means we get to actually try and do the thing of hiding Claw's face, even if they don't do a great job. But the effort is appreciated, and not only because we can't get Everett back, nor would we want to. To me, this is an important conceit, because as far as I'm concerned, Dr. Claw doesn't have a face. Oh, I'm sorry, you bought a toy in the 80s with the sticker over the package, you peeled it off to reveal this, and you want to just like, accept that? Oh, they used that image in a cheapo game once or twice. Oh, I see, oh, it must be canon now. Nah, I don't buy it. Here. Even the official artist is like, no way, it's whatever you want. It's your face, you own it. What is canon?
What is reality? Who governs it? What are the rules?
That said, there is one weird undercurrent they carried over, and I can't tell if it's just me. In the first movie, Claw loses his hand in a stupidly convoluted way. Gadget crashes his car, Claw blows it up, a bowling ball flies out of the trunk, kasplat. Fast forward to this movie, and he's hiding out in an abandoned bowling alley, dressing his henchmen in bowling shirts, sitting on his 10-pin version of the Iron Throne. They never get into it, but the gag of how far the bowling theme feeds into Mad's production design keeps building through the movie. And I don't know, it feels like somebody thought about that. Feels like someone had an idea to express that's psychologically weird. And I dig that, man. I'm here for all of it. There's decent jokes in here. This is a funny movie.
Notice anything suspicious about those musicians?
Aside from the fact that the music doesn't match the instruments they're playing?
There's a lot that feels like it had more thought than you expect, including the one major new addition, the rival gadget, G2, and I have to tell you, this is what maybe puts the film over into necessary fan territory. This design, this character, could fit in perfectly with the actual show. Not just making a lady gadget, but giving her her own personality with a French police uniform. Genius. Someone opened a book. She makes an impression beyond the look too, with her super tough outlook on crime and a punch-first attitude, offers some real fun dynamics compared to Gadget.
Stop this felonious and unlawful act or I shall have to use force.
She's basically RoboCop, more than he is.
Well, then we'll just destroy it.
Whoa! She'd absolutely get a guy acid burn. For real, I don't think a new Gadget thing is being honest with themselves if they don't bring her back. You can't expect a Greg Weisman-style invested fan narrative or a deep-cut Dexter satire if G2 isn't there. That's going to be your watermark going forward for anyone who really cares about this, I guarantee.
I was wrong to think of you as inept, clumsy,
Imbecilic.
Don't mention it.
Obsolete. Simple-minded. Malfunction.
It's funny that 2 Gadget films have now done the replacement Gadget plot, but this one does it better, by actually having a plot I can understand while sober. Gadget's feeling obsolete. He gets replaced. He tries to prove himself. Penny feels the same, goes out of her way to get her own recognition in spite of everyone telling her no. There's conflict. There's conflict in this movie.
Oh no.
Even G2 ends up becoming trash like Gadget and decides to swap processing chips to take on his human flaws, while helping his own, with Gadget realizing not every silly power he has is a drawback. And in the end, everyone learns to love their imperfections. Boom, done, amazing. Sounds pretty basic, right? Easy stuff. Well, there are multi-billion-dollar Hollywood blockbusters not putting this into practice. I feel some movies have the Gadget 1 problem, where they feel like they have to not just set up, but overly justify all their concepts to an audience, rather than explore the existing potential of the property, tying itself in narrative knots to get there. Gadget 2 trusts the material and keeps it simple, and in doing so, actually grants us faster access to character emotions, thematic arcs, and all the extra new ideas they can build to. Gadget always glitching was a constant issue in the series.
Go, Gadget Copter! No, no, no!
So it's nice to have a movie that actually does something with that, and tries to, for the first time, almost resolve it within its thematic message of self-respect. Unlike the first film, which is vaguely about be pure of heart and not spider of heart, you dope. Of course I'm massively biased here. This gets quoted quite often around these here parts.
Stolen money. Stakeout? Not at the stakeout.
He's a very busy man. I'm a busy man too.
But I don't feel a connection to Gadget 1, which I was desperate to see when it came out. I was immensely bored, confused, and disappointed, and hey, over 20 years later, still the case. Happy birthday to me. Plenty of other kiddies movies get a pass on way less. Why not Gadget 2? 2?
No, 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 no.
The whole thing is weirdly plucky. That this tiny movie made for babies is making an effort and having fun with the process, throwing in little funny bits and quirks I've been thinking about for years. This fella was just some guy they found who looked like that, and they were like, hey, Dr. Robotnik, be in our movie. The mayor is actually quite a distinguished performer, with a dramatic rap sheet as long as your arm. Not that you'd know, 5 miles out of Bendigo. There were whole deleted scenes where Claw was going to call out Penny, never getting the credit in a bid to make her join him. That's not a bad arc either.
I'll listen to you. I'll take you seriously.
How is it I know so much about this? Well, I'll tell you, because the DVD this came out on is stacked. I'm pretty sure, being a direct-to-video, Gadget 2 is one of the earliest DVDs to exist ever, and they were packing those things with just about every extra you can imagine. Part of the reason I refuse to sell these anymore. It's got it all. Behind-the-scenes logs, prop tests, interviews. I had to do a double take when I saw it inexplicably had a commentary track with the director and leads.
For you in your mind when you came on board knowing that someone else had played an earlier version, it was like James Bond, it's like a new deal.
No, the way I feel like it's a new deal, because it's like Batman.
Yeah.
Val Kilmer's Batman is not George Clooney's Batman.
Yeah.
I kind of had, Don Adams in my mind probably a little bit more, and in spots you can hear that it's a blatant just rip-off.
You can laugh that this exists, but the fact it's reasonably candid and packs genuine, surprising insights implies there was good thinking going on behind the cameras, and whatever you may think of its effectiveness, they clearly had some investment going in.
And I've always gone by the philosophy, and this is something that I know the Marx Brothers used to do when they were making their movies, that they would get the perfect length movie and then cut 5 minutes. And I think it leaves you wanting more, and it leaves you with no extraneous fat or information. There's a couple of things that sure I miss on a storytelling level, but not on a pacing level.
Please tell me it's true for Country Bears too. I need to know what was going on with Walken. It's the joy of Nickelodeon Gunge media, of embracing the fun of being a kid's property without acting like it knows better. Played so earnestly, it sometimes gets a little high on the sniff of its own ambitions, and I do too, actually.
Go Gadget Power Brush.
You weren't there. You were not there when I was watching this with friends, and accidentally preempted this moment by breaking down into nervous giggling, setting off a chain reaction of laughter. And when they asked what was going on, all I could manage, all I could say before it happened was, poopy toilets. We all knew what that meant. We'd all experienced it as kids in the 2000s, and we all died when we saw this puppet. I think most media wins the argument by throwing one across the screen, honestly.
Careful in there. That toilet's got quite a flush.
It is quite something to see the effort, at this level, for something they knew probably wasn't going to be widely viewed, and clearly was never intended to be all that seriously thought of. But I think all those extras almost validates the positive energy coming off this thing, and the delight it brought to me and my sister years ago. The DVD was presented to us and we were like, oh, really? Having not loved the first one. Since the day we realized it was actually great, we've sat in front of it many times with others, all of who got it, to the point where it became a bit of cultural shorthand, right down to Fred Stewart's face popping up around my university house share. Is it Rear Window? No. Is it Amadeus? No. Is it Postman Pat the movie? Close. But what it is, for me, is a pretty baseline example of the appeal of doing an adaptation, especially for a kid's property. I say this even as a fan of the Gosnell Gunn Scooby movies, because frankly, that first one is it's pretty nasty. I don't mean that in a bad way, it's just the vibe. Kind of a grotty up yours to tradition in an edgier take on the property, but not one I think of as a definitive new Scooby adaptation, which is why Scooby-Doo 2 is much closer to Inspector Gadget 2 territory in my eyes. They play the source straight, they dig into what's already available, and use the potential to tell an entertaining story on the next level of intensity, giving off the impression they actually liked the property and cared about sharing that with a wider audience. Still had a poopy toilet moment, of course, one that's so needlessly aggressive it made me crease.
Skeleton Man.
But like Inspector Gadget 2, it's more interested in playing to the strengths of the source, which feels like that should be a no-brainer, but isn't always a guarantee either. No, I'm not elaborating. Which is why I look to the consistency of the vision in question whenever it comes to these things. Sure, I have no true answers in the age of the remake, reboot, revival, or requel, Ruby-dooby-doo, but I think it's simply down to having a reason. Any reason. Having something when I watch that makes me go, oh, you cared to tell this story. I see it. I get it. I can understand The Mask, I can understand Scooby-Doo 2, and I can understand Inspector Gadget 2, in a way I really can't with the first one. And it's more than featuring things I remember and going, hey, we're fans too, and you do it too, and I recognize that. It's using them in ways that show an understanding of why they worked for the source, why they're worth doing again, and how they can be embellished in a 90-minute runtime while having fun in the process, I think. Gadget 2 is what it purports to be, a light-hearted cash-in on a then-popular brand, and just so happened to use that opportunity to make corrections it didn't have to, yet we can be grateful for existing at all. I don't think it needs recognition of any great magnitude in return. We don't have to all suddenly get out there and support it and get a revival to happen now or else. Maybe give Fred Stewart a nice tweet or something, I don't know, he kind of deserves it.
Just a check.
What I do want to do is tip the hat to its existence, acknowledge there was actually something out there that recognized this could be done differently, and on very little money and time, actually made a decent correction, justifying why something like the cartoon had an audience to begin with. It made an effort, it wanted to do something good, and, you know, that's all you can ever really ask of these things, innit?
I'll get you next time, Gadget!
All of this so that you probably watch the film and go, what the bloody hell was he on about?
This apron can protect me from getting burned.
Well, it's a good thing I wore an apron.